This is WFYI News Now. It's October 14th, and I'm your host, Abriana Herron. On today's show, new affordable housing units on the city's near west side. The future of economic development in Indiana, according to each candidate running for governor. And a lack of Election Day voting sites at Purdue University is causing concern amongst leaders, students, and community members.
But the pushback is, is this a form of voter suppression, intentional or unintentional?
Those stories coming up. But first, the expansion of an adult high school on the southeast side is complete. The Excel Center is in the former Paul Miller School 114 building. Since opening in 2023, it has served over 500 students and graduated 25 with high school diplomas. The center also helps students earn college credits and industry certifications. The school is a partnership of Goodwill of Central and Southern Indiana, Indianapolis Public Schools, and the city. The Indianapolis Department of Metropolitan Development on Wednesday unveiled 2 new affordable housing units. Officials say it's just a small part of the work being done to reduce the city's shortage of affordable housing. The houses are located on the city's near west side and were developed as part of the city's Vacant to Vibrant program. Mayor Joe Hogsett says the program seeks to turn unused vacant properties into affordable housing.
We recognize the potential of this land back then, and to see that potential fully realized here today is a gratifying experience.
Gloria Johnson has lived in the neighborhood for 20 years. She says the development is encouraging, but that the area needs more help.
It's nice to have, some upgrade up in the neighborhood, but it also needs to be addressed. Like you see those empty, abandoned houses, somebody needs to talk to whoever the owners of those are, because that's dangerous.
The new houses are reserved for people who make roughly $80,000 or less a year. The project was funded through a partnership between the city and several partners that provide grants to fund it. Indiana's economic development strategy seems likely to shift next year, regardless who wins the race for governor. That's because, unlike many policy areas, there's a lot of overlap in how Republican Mike Braun, Democrat Jennifer McCormick, and Libertarian Donald Rainwater view the issue. All three talk about greater support for small businesses. It's a subject Braun emphasizes as he highlights the multi-million-dollar company he grew from a small business.
And I remember no one ever came to my door knocking, nor did I hear about something that would help the thousands of them and us back then with economic development.
McCormick says it's important to focus on making Indiana a desirable place to live.
We're going to be attracting all these jobs, but we have to have a state that has a quality of place that we can attract people to take those jobs and sustain our communities and be strong and thrive.
Libertarian Donald Rainwater's approach would be the largest shift. He says the state has been destroying the foundation of its economy by focusing solely on big companies that pay high wages. He says it's killing small businesses and family farms. And for our final story today, Purdue University is being criticized by student leaders and state legislators over a lack of on-campus voting sites for the upcoming election. I recently spoke with Lafayette reporter Dave Bangert to discuss the issue and to find out what students can expect ahead of the election. So, Dave, what exactly has happened since the story broke about the lack of on-campus voting sites at Purdue University?
The election board, which is a 3-member board here in Tippecanoe County, voted on where they were going to put election sites and early voting sites on August 15th. As they were voting, they knew that they were not putting sites on campus, and actually brought up one of the leaders in the Purdue votes, asked, is this going to be a problem? And they said that they were trying to push for a site, but they had problems with technical questions, dedicated Wi-Fi, parking regulations. Anyway, so they they seemed to realize that was a problem, and they went ahead and voted. So they have 15 election day sites in town and 9 early sites with about 300 hours of early voting. But nothing on campus on election day and nothing in early voting, which is really an odd situation here. And about 2 weeks ago, the Purdue Exponent, the student paper, was the first to just basically raise that question, is this going to be a problem? And that really set off a fire here in the community about trying to fix that.
Yeah, when that news broke, there was a lot of pushback from students, student leaders, and state legislators. What were some of their concerns?
Well, the concern is that on-campus voting is pretty heavy. We have vote centers here like most people do, across the state now, but we've been doing that since 2007. And in that time for the presidential races, the on-campus voting sites, both early and election day, have accounted for anywhere from 4.5% to 10% of the total vote in the community. But the pushback is, is this a form of voter suppression, intentional or unintentional, by not putting something in the Purdue Memorial Union? Or 4 years ago, it was at Mackey Arena.
What happened during that Tippecanoe County Elections Board meeting on September 27th?
Purdue kind of pulled out the stops and said that they would work with the county to try to figure out at least an early voting site, if not an election day site. And what they were able to work out was 6 hours from 10 to 4 on October 24th at the CoRec, which is a pretty popular and easy site on campus. There was an election board meeting to certify that and add that site as a 10th site for early voting. But the election board said that it was basically getting up against the deadline of getting all the machines registered through the state and assigned to the other 15 election day sites. They weren't sure they could get that done, so they did not vote to add that. So people were still very frustrated about that outcome.
So what is Purdue and the county elections board going to do to kind of rectify this issue?
Well, I've asked that question for Purdue. They actually have a very active Purdue Votes program that is intended to get students to understand, where to vote, how to vote. I was at the Purdue Student Government Senate meeting a week ago where they passed a resolution that encouraged an election day site and an early voting site, and also encouraged the university and the county election board basically to do better next time, not to ignore the students. So it's still up in the air about what they're going to do. There's still a lot of voting around campus. It's just not going to be in the heart of campus like it's been in every presidential year since 2008.
Well, thank you so much, Dave.
All right, thanks for the call.
That's all for today's episode of WFYI News Now. Our podcast is produced by Drew Daudelin, with support from the news team at WFYI and public media journalists across the state. Our news director is Sarah Neal-Estes. Kendall Antron produced our music, and I'm your host, Abriana Herron. If you like today's episode, remember to subscribe and share, and follow WFYI on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and YouTube to check in on our newsroom throughout the day. Thanks for listening. We'll be back tomorrow.